Hello, my name is Chandra Shekhar Sinha from the World Bank, and I will make a presentation on the capacity building programs related to Article 6 that we have at the World Bank. And in order to start my presentation, let me start to share my screen. I hope everything is clear, and in my presentation, which will last about 10 minutes, I intend to cover the Partnership for Market Readiness, the Climate Warehouse Program, the Climate Market Club, and the Partnership for Market Implementation. These are all capacity building programs which are focused on Article 6 and the carbon markets, the international carbon markets. As many of you are familiar, the World Bank has a large program for carbon markets and carbon funds. Those of you who are interested in a broader range of programs in the World Bank, do feel free to get in touch with us. But for today's presentation, let me start with the Partnership for Market Readiness. Partnership for Market Readiness is one of our oldest capacity building programs linked to carbon market. It started almost 7 or 8 years ago and involves nearly 25 countries where a range of carbon market instruments have been designed, and capacity in those countries have been developed to implement such programs. And this Partnership for Market Readiness is about $125 million program, involves 13 partners. Over the years, it has covered countries which are responsible for about 40% of the emissions and half of the global population. And the idea behind these programs was to work with countries, build their capacity to understand a whole range of carbon market instruments, including carbon tax, emission trading system, and the crediting mechanisms. And the countries who have participated in the PMR have looked at all of these options and we've gone through what is called the market readiness exercise, and a proposal through which they look at their national circumstances to identify what are the programs that is most suitable for their national circumstances and for implementation. So for instance, you had Brazil, India, Argentina, Indonesia, and so on, as is listed on the slide, go through that process, and countries like Argentina, Chile, South Africa decided to go forward with a carbon tax kind of a carbon market instrument, while others like Chile, China, instead decided to proceed with emission trading systems. And the Partnership for Market Readiness was utilized to facilitate design of such instruments. A very important part of this overall program was trying to build knowledge, better understanding, capacity building, and nearly 40 publications have been made by the Partnership for Market Readiness based on the experiences of the countries for the whole range of carbon pricing instruments, including emission trading systems, carbon taxes, and the international crediting mechanisms. As this program has come to an end, we recognize the importance of engaging countries in beginning to implement such programs. And I will come to the successor program, what is called the successor program, the Partnership for Market Implementation at the end. But as the programs progressed and the agreements around the Paris Agreement became clearer, and it became obvious that Article 6.2 would require a decentralized market mechanism where countries would need to prepare more than they had for carbon markets linked to the Kyoto Protocol. And the Paris Agreement, because of its decentralized nature, required a slightly different approach. And therefore, about 3 years ago, the World Bank initiated what is called the Climate Warehouse Program, through which we begin thinking about how to pilot programs which generate mitigation outcomes, as they are referred to in the Paris Agreement. How do you create mitigation outcomes? How would you account and store these mitigation outcomes till Paris Agreement moves forward with the implementation? And how would you transact with these mitigation outcomes? How do you trade mitigation outcomes? So the overall program recognized that these are three elements that would be there under the Paris Agreement. And we designed work programs for capacity building, understanding, conceptualizing under these three broad categories. But we recognize that there is a need for a cross-cutting set of activities on creating an enabling policy and regulatory environment, and to assist many of our developing client countries to put it in place institutional arrangements which would allow for efficient market infrastructure and for the governance of the related institutional arrangement, infrastructure such as registries and so on. And therefore, one of the things that we had to do was to move forward with a platform which we're calling the Climate Market Club, which I will describe in a subsequent slide, to facilitate discussion between countries on modalities, procedures for piloting, which could then inform the decision around how Paris Agreement related carbon markets could be operationalized. So it was an effort to build capacity through actual consultation and piloting process. And that has been the approach that the World Bank has taken since the start of the carbon market linked to the Kyoto Protocol, where we emphasize on the necessity of learning by doing. And that's very similar to the philosophy of the JCM and the way JCM has worked in nearly 24 countries in trying to put together these piloting through which you could develop partnerships from which countries could participate in the carbon market. So the first part that I wanted to talk a little bit about is what we call the climate warehouse, which is the infrastructure that is necessary for trading in emissions reductions for the carbon market. And we have to recognize that because of the decentralized nature, there will be a need for a registry infrastructure to track and account for the reductions from activities that take place, and that these registries would be could be national registries. They could be registries of independent standards such as Gold Standard or Vera, or it can be a centralized registry, or the way it used to be for the CDM. And as you know, the Paris Agreement does provide, the negotiations for the Paris Agreement have provided an option for a centralized registry system as well. And the idea of the climate warehouse is to be able to link all these different registries, whether these are registries from countries like Japan or registries from independent standards like Gold Standard, or through the centralized registry, how to link them so that transactions can be tracked and accounted through the connected system like the climate warehouse. Because in the case of the Paris Agreement, particularly for Article 6.2, there is no clear provision for a tracking mechanism the way it has been for the for Kyoto Protocol, where you had the international transaction log which tracked the emission reduction. So the climate warehouse is expected to play a very, very important role in making sure that there is accurate tracking, accounting, and the avoidance of double counting. And we think the climate warehouse provides an opportunity for countries to get together and learn from this, build capacity, and understand how to have this infrastructure in place. And both Japan and Chile, from where you have some discussions earlier today, are a part of the climate warehouse discussion as well. Now, in order to better understand how these modalities would work, we realized very quickly that there is a need for a platform while the negotiators discuss the possibilities and try to understand how actually the Article 6.2 in particular can be operationalized. There's a need for countries to get together and think of how the piloting could be done. And that is the context in which we created the Climate Market Club, of which Japan is also a part, as are several of JCM partner countries that you will see on the list. Over here. We intend to restrict the participation to about 15 countries in order to allow for good capacity building and consultation and discussion. The Climate Market Club also provides for implementing partners of the countries to be participants in this. So, for instance, a Click Foundation, which has also described their program earlier today, is a part of the Climate Market Club, as is Chile, as is Bangladesh. So there are many overlaps between the partnership that JCM has and the partnerships or the membership of the Climate Market Club, through which ideas around how the piloting should take place will be coordinated. The club is supposed to be, as I mentioned, a platform. It is not a legal entity. It operates through approach papers, agreed approach papers for institutional arrangements through determination of environmental integrity, or how registry infrastructure should be designed, or what would be the accounting methodology. So all of these are discussed in the club meeting. And the club meeting takes place almost every month. That's one of the advantages of the pandemic has been the ability to meet virtually. So we meet every month for 2 hours and discuss different elements of the piloting through which countries can move forward in implementation of Article 6.2. So it has proved to be an extremely valuable platform for exchange and of knowledge and capacity building and discussion. And as we move forward with better understanding of how we could implement Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, we are heading towards a phase of implementation, and that's where the last initiative I wanted to describe today is which is the Partnership for Market Implementation, which is, as I mentioned right in the beginning, the successor program for the PMR, the Partnership for Market Implementation, through which we want to focus on the implementation part of carbon pricing instruments for carbon markets, for emission trading systems, and so on. And this Partnership for Market Implementation, of which Japan again is a part, was first announced at COP25 in 2019, and since then there's been a long process of consultation and discussion through which we intend to launch it for expressions of interest and move forward with implementation in July. And the PMI, as we call it, the Partnership for Market Implementation, or PMI, has 3 windows of support. One will be for implementation support. Those countries who participated in the PMR or otherwise are ready to move forward with the implementation of market instruments domestically. This could be ETSs or carbon taxes or international crediting instruments, how to put those arrangements in place. The second window is linked to assisting countries who are not yet ready for implementation to do readiness work or preparation work. And the third window is for providing other targeted support, whether it's a regional alliance of countries to develop carbon markets or other targeted kind of support. So the PMI, which is going to last for 10 years, is expected to be one of our anchor programs for supporting many of our client countries with the capacity building going forward. So I hope I was able to give you a sense of a range of capacity building initiatives at the World Bank. Japan and JCM programs have been integral part of our discussion of these capacity building programs, and we work very closely with the JCM program and the Ministry of Environment in Japan to deliver on many of the capacity building efforts and for our thinking of how to move forward with the operationalizing of Article 6. So thank you very much, and I look forward to any questions that you may have, and we'll definitely get back to you with responses. Thank you.